When I was asked to do this video on stewarding our core personal message, I was given a list of bullet points of topics and things to reflect on. And so for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to simply go through those bullet points and then share my part of my journey with you. So the first thing is to talk about the discovery process. And for me, one of the biggest insights and helpful things along the way is to understand and really get that this really is a lifelong journey. And in that process, things like having a journey mindset, having language, having skills, having tools that help me figure out what's my wiring, what's my design, what does it have to say about who I am and that personal core message, and then how to steward it has been so helpful. And one of the biggest ways I've learned how to do that beyond having people directly walking with me in my life has been honestly the Destiny Discovery Quest process. It's just been invaluable. I know some of you know what that is and been through that, but the first time I went through that was in my teenage years. So having that consistently throughout my life and growing in the skills and the language and how to use the tools and implement them in my own life and with others has just been huge. I can't say how big that has been in helping me to begin to discover some of my personal core message. Next one is, what has it looked like for you to distill your life message? One of the things has been, it's so simple and yet it's huge, is simply being open to the idea and being able to receive the truth that God has personal core message stuff that He has hardwired into each one of us. And when I begin to see that, accept that, have the courage, the humility, and the trust to begin to walk in that and discover that literally was the starting point of my discovery process. Also, kind of a duh thing, but man, without this it doesn't work, is I've constantly been asking the Holy Spirit throughout my life to help me notice the things where there's clues or cues of that core message stuff and wiring stuff, to help me recognize it. And then when He does that, I have a choice, and my choice has to continually be to pay attention to it, to recognize no matter how simple and little and seemingly insignificant it is, something's going on and I need to pay attention. Then when I start paying attention, being able to take time to reflect on it, to write about it, journal it. Even the other part is inviting other people into the process. Having people reflect to me what they're hearing and saying, and being intentional and very proactive about saying, okay, you just said this about how you just experienced me. Help me understand that, because I'm thinking that is not a big deal. It's kind of like, that's nothing. But obviously it's impacting you in a certain way, so help me understand that. So paying attention to what people are saying. In fact, this happened not too long ago when I was at the church offices, and I was talking with a guy about something, and I was just sharing a conversation that I was having with my boys, and it was almost like he was freaking out. And I thought, why is he freaking out? This is just a conversation I had with my boys. So I started asking him questions about it, and he was like, Wendy, you have the way you talk with your kids and how you talk with them and what you talk with them about and how you're sharing your life with them, and you're wanting input and feedback. You're not waiting till they're adults and they're a part of the journey with you. That's unheard of. And I'm like, really? Why is that why would you not do that? That's what I'm thinking. So I literally went home and sat the boys down and said, okay guys, I need some help. So when I shared, and I reflected on the conversation I had with them, several days ago, and I said, when that happened, how did you experience that? Because I'm thinking maybe the guys are thinking, this is weird that Mom's sharing all this stuff with us. And they were like, no, that wasn't weird. That's no big deal. So I realized I need to stop and reflect on this. It's not a big deal for me. It's not a big deal for my children. But for somebody else on the outside looking in, it was like a crazy, something wild just happened. So part of the discovery process has been, and distilling my life message has been, when those kind of moments happen on the radar of my life, learning to recognize it, then stop and reflect on it, asking the Holy Spirit to give me insight on it, and having other people speak into that with me as well. The next thing is specific examples of pieces of your personal core message that you've become clear about. Actually, the crazy thing about this is that the more I do this, the more I'm realizing is in there. And part of it for me is, well, I won't get into that. So things that I say a lot that you'll hear if you're around me. Keep life with God simple. If kids can't get it, we've overcomplicated life. So that whole aspect of having fun, even being silly and preserving a childlike heart, that's just huge for me. Discovering the realness of God in everyday life, and having it be something that's very, very practical. That's, again, another huge thing for me. It's like I'm often saying, if it doesn't work at home, it's not going to work anywhere else, or at least it won't have any sustaining power anywhere else. We have no business touting something out there, out on the stage of life, if it doesn't work at home. So that whole thing of life with God being so practical and real and tangible and applicable to every single day life where the rubber hits the road, I'm passionate about that. Which connects with learning to not compartmentalize God, recognizing that all of life is sacred. And so, again, learning to recognize the little conversations and the messages and the winks and how God is communicating with us in the everyday part of life, and how I engage that says a lot about my relationship with God and with other people. Intimacy with God, having that deep connection with Jesus, and yet having that be something that's very practical and not this super ethereal, something out there that just doesn't connect with everyday life. Again, that's huge for me. Personal ownership is huge for me. The whole aspect of, I've heard it said recently this way, that summarizes it well for me. There's God's part that only He can do. So that's the whole intimacy with Jesus, Jesus being number one in my life. And He can only do things that I can't. So He's got to do His part, right? Which He's committed to doing. Then there's my part that God won't do. And that whole process of, what does that mean? What does personal ownership mean? How do I steward my life well? That's just, I'm passionate about that. The power of responding versus reacting, journey mindset versus destination mindset, I'm all about that. The power of little things, things, again, that it's one of the ways I recognized this was something really spiritual in the movie What About Bob? I love the baby steps, baby steps, baby steps phrase. Well, why do I love that? Because that's the very practical, tangible. If we don't know how to engage life with God and each other in very practical, tangible baby step ways, then it's not going to go anywhere. That's the slower part, right? There's another principle I've heard called slower is faster. Well, a lot of people have heard that phrase, and it's like, okay, that's fine, and they move on. When I heard that, I latched on to it. Why? Because that taps into some core message stuff for me, that the slower, steady, sometimes it just feels like we're sludging and trudging through life, and what's the point? Why do I need to make, in these millions of moments of decision I have to have every single day, why is that so important? Because that's my slower part that I need to be committed to doing. And as I do that, God does the faster piece. He infuses that with His greatness and His goodness. And it's a mystery to me how it happens, but He does it, and He's crazy good at it. So that whole thing of the infusion of God and the majesty of who God is in my everyday life and what that means for how we live life. Okay, you're probably hearing the same thing over and over again, which says something about my personal core message. Okay, big T truth versus little T truth, especially in the messiness of life. Again, life is messy, and messy is good. Messy isn't good in and of itself, but the reason why I love that is because, again, it's the infusion of God in those messy moments where the transformation takes place. And I even think in God's economy, he loves those moments almost more than... Anyway, I won't get off on that. Okay. So another thing I'm always talking about is the posture of our heart, that there's got to be real tangible transformation or it's not worth it. And I'm also have learned how much I'm not a formalities gal, and so just the being able to be informal and be a safe place and create safe places for people to be real and authentic, and this is what life looks like in the raw form, and that's actually beautiful in God's eyes. And anyway, okay, so I could go off on that. The next point is, how have you identified the who your message is for? This has honestly been very hard for me, and I'm still in process with it because so much of what I'm about comes down to the relationship. It's about relationship with God, relationship with myself, and then my core people. So if you're married, your marriage, your spouse. If you have children, then your family, and then at work and teams and at church and leadership, it's like everything comes down to relationships. So therefore my message is for everybody, and I want the whole world to get this. So that has been hard for me because I'm really working at synthesizing and narrowing it down. So basically, at this point where I'm at is for those who want more, who are just done with status quo life, who want more of God, more in their marriage, more in their parenting, more in their life and stewarding themselves well, more in terms of leadership and working in teams and how do we do life well. I don't know how else to do it at this point, but that's at the moment where I'm at, an evolving, ongoing process. The next point is how you have thought about sharing your message in your material. Well, that has been something, man, I could say a lot on this, but I've been on a very long journey and process with this because normally what you think of is writing, right? Like I got to create content and material, put it in writing. And again, I'm not a formalities gal. I hated English. It was so miserable for me. I didn't get all that rules and now I understand why, because how I was taught in school was a formal way. I've now since discovered some non-formal, informal ways of writing and creating that's just so life-giving for me, and also things that I've heard reflect back from other people about, man, when you write me cards and when you send me a note of encouragement, I love it because I feel like I'm sitting in the room with you, and the things you say and how you say it's like, okay, and again, another one of those things where you stop and you take note. People are being a reflective mirror. Why is it that I get that kind of response from people when I write notes or cards or I'm just sharing my story? There's something going on there that says something to me beyond the formal writing. At the same time, I've had people say to me, you need to write a book. You need to write some books. I've even had a prophetic word. I was visiting a church in some other state, and this guy came up afterwards and said, I just feel like God's telling me you need to write. So I've always wrestled with that. I've not liked those kinds of words and input because I don't know what I'd write about, and haven't seen myself as a good writer, and yet there's something there. So I don't know how many times I've just cried out to God saying, I don't get this. I don't know what to do with this because I can't do it the way, the world says you got to put your, whatever the box is, the container, that's not me. So I don't know how to do it. If that's not me, then what am I supposed to do? And then being very frustrated. So I began to, about 4 years ago, I began to just get really intentional about it and asked a team of people. I literally said, I don't know how to do this, but I need a team of people to walk with me. So please help me. And here's what I need. I need prayer. I need feedback. I need encouragement. I need ideas and ways to do this. So one of the things that we came up with was to have a writing retreat where I just get away and just do some writing. And let me tell you, that was miserable. It was not fun. And I came away from that thing feeling like an absolute failure. Here I am, years down the road, trying to follow God, walk in obedience to things that He's put in my heart, and I'm getting nowhere, and I'm miserable. And it was so helpful to have that team of people around me to give feedback and input and say, maybe it's not supposed to look that way. And anyway, so fast forward to last year, I started working with New Hope Church and walking with the elder team and the staff team in working in this whole process of personal growth and development and stewarding our spiritual journey with God. And anyway, what evolved from that, I had no clue what I was doing when I started, but what evolved was I began to create short little videos where people would listen to the content, the talking head part, where I'm giving information, and the teaching part via video. And they would watch that ahead of time so that when we're in our meetings or in our coaching appointments, the talking head pieces happen and we're spending our time engaging the content in real everyday life where we're applying it and recognizing the teach moments. That was really working, and I was getting feedback right away and what worked, what didn't. And so I kept working on that. So all that to say, I'm right in the middle of the process of looking at and working on creating the content piece, the material stuff in video format. Also recognize I'm a verbal processor, and this gives me a way to, I feel like I'm engaging somebody. I'm so relational. So like a piece of paper, blank paper, it doesn't work for me. So I'm in the process of learning what's my way and what does that look like, and having other people feed into the process, being massively stretched because I can talk and talk and talk, and learning the discipline of synthesizing and condensing. And anyway, there's a whole bunch there. So that's part of how this process has been evolving for me in terms of what the content looks like, what the material looks like, because that feels so, again, formal and big and whatever. I don't know. I'm just doing life. Just let me do life and figure out how to a way to do it so that it can get captured and replicated. So having a team of people with me, interviewing other people and asking questions. How do you do this? Getting the support, encouragement, and accountability that I need. I needed accountability. I needed encouragement. Okay. Also, any advice on learnings that you want to share? Number one, cry out to God for help. I don't know how else to say this other than I have spent days and weeks and years literally on my face crying and weeping out to God saying, you've put something in me. I don't know how to get it out. And I know you're not mean. I know you're not being like this nasty God that's kind of dangling this thing out here and tantalizing me going, neener, this thing's in you, but I'm not going to really help you get it out. So going, it's in there. I'm showing up. I'm saying yes to this thing, and I'm willing to take the risk, but I don't know what to do, God. So you have to infuse this. So I don't know how else to say this other than cry out to God, because only He can really show you the way. And besides, what we want is His infusion anyway, because when He does it His way, it's what we want. So crying out to God, schedule times in your calendar to reflect, to ask the questions, to listen, to have the dialogue with God, to listen to Him. Make an ongoing list of things you hear from people. Again, people are constantly being reflective mirror to you. What are you hearing about how people experience you? What they hear from you? Write those things down. What are your favorite scriptures? What are the things kind of like, these are my mantras. Like when you get around Wendy, she's always saying, it's a teachable moment. Oh my goodness, let's unpack that. I'm always saying stuff like that. And our kids will roll their eyes and, that kind of thing. Ask others to walk with you. And then just try something. The way I've gotten where I'm at the moment, even though it's an ongoing process and I haven't arrived, is trying things and then learning from it. And again, getting the support you need along the way, asking for accountability, asking for the encouragement. That's part of taking personal ownership, is saying, I need help with this. So then, trying something. And then when I talked about, trying something and keep trying, Part of what that looked like, and it continues to look like for me, is doing brain dumps, where I just dump all this stuff out on paper, but it's in my way, it's not in a formal way. Also, Eric introduced me to mind mapping, where you get into this software and you just start saying, here's this, which is because for me, my mind, there's everything is connected to everything, and then it feels like this spider web of chaos. So I did the discipline work of entering all my brain dump and my heart dump into this mind mapping thing, and it started putting it into some semblance of order. It's like, oh, that's the order that is in my mind, but I didn't know how to get that out. Another thing is sharing that. Then I shared that with other people. So I shared that with Justin, and he came back and he was like, oh, here's what's happening, and here's what you're doing, and I was like, yeah, I needed that outside perspective. So getting outside perspective. And then, I know you've heard this before, in fact, it's one of the topics, input sessions in the Destiny Discovery Quest process, which is called Get Going and Get Growing. And it really is so simple and yet so profoundly powerful, is to just take a step. And when we keep taking those steps, God will infuse it, and we begin the thing grows. So, questions you're thinking about right now. Right now, my question is, God, how can I keep up? Seriously, because as I have been choosing over the years to steward this thing and ask God for help and others for help, it's expanding and it's exploding in ways that are beyond me. And now I'm on my face again saying, God, help. You've got to infuse this, because I don't know how to steward all this. I don't know how to handle it all. I don't know what to do with it all. So continuing to do the same thing, showing up, asking God for help, being willing to take the risk and having the courage and having the faith and the trust and the humility to say, I'm going to do this. It's just an ongoing process. Continually keeping connected with Jesus, with my own heart, with other people. And just to wrap it up, I feel like really simply stewarding our core message is an ongoing journey, and it's an ongoing journey of continually identifying our unique design, of being an ongoing dialogue with God, others, myself, and then responding in obedience and learning how to make this available to others, because this isn't just for ourselves. This is not a self-serving, look what God has given to me, woohoo, it's all about me. No, it's always, we have been given so that we can then give. We have been blessed so that we can then bless. So going through this process and stewarding all this is learning how to not only live our own lives well, but give it to others well, so that it can go on. There can be legacy, a generational legacy that is left, and it's not lost, because what God has put in you is for many, many people and many generations to come.